Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Russell Jackman. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. Today's trivia theme is NFL running back, since we are getting into NFL season right around the corner. And in our next segment, we're going to introduce our guest who's been on our show before, Emmy Award television and radio sportscaster, Jim Kozimor. Let's see, when we come back, also I want to talk a little bit about Anthony Davis signing a pretty large contract with the Lakers. Want to get your guys' feeling on the climate protesters disrupting Andy Murray's tennis match. Russell liked this one about Vince McMahon's house being raided. And MMA fighter Stephen Thompson still has not been paid. We'll talk about what's going on with him. And let's see. Russell, any last few words before we cut to our first commercial break here?
No, it's our privilege to have former Sacramento Kings voice, Kozimor, on our show, and maybe he can tell us what his thoughts are about how the Kings will do next season, which is only really about a month away.
Coming up pretty soon here. All right, this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments currently yielding over 7%, secured by real estate. By the way, no investors ever lost money. And of course, no, what do they say? Past results are not an indication of future, but close enough. All right. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial, because when we come back, we're going to reintroduce our special guest, Jim Kozimor. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman. Russell, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
Yeah, he's my favorite radio show host with a Z in his last name. He's a man who used to cover the Kings for KHTK out in Sacramento, and it only took him bailing on the team for the team to finally find a way to make it into the playoffs.
But don't worry, Jim. We don't blame you for that.
Yeah, I know it.
In fact, if you were in town, I know you're in Tennessee right now, but if you were in town, Russell and I are going to be doing the Joe Morgan Memorial Celebrity Golf Tournament.
Great tournament. I've played in that tournament on a few occasions. That's a great tournament with a great group of people and a wonderful cause. And Joe was such a wonderful human being and did so much for the Bay Area.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, Vida died this year, so we're going to be.
That was a stunner. Just a heartbreaker right there too.
You know, and it's funny because I was looking at like his baseball card, and he's all serious and all this stuff, and then now last year, let's say he was in his 70s, and he's just a calm, nice guy. I think age does that to us,
Yeah, and just a wonderful guy.
I think Vida Blue may have told a million stories to people, and I think he died with a million that he didn't even get to tell everybody.
Probably.
Yeah, that's a good point, Russell. That's a really good point. He was a wonderful human being, great guy to work with. When I was over at NBC Sports Bay Area in California, we did a lot of Giants pre- and post-game shows together. And there are times when you sit there, you're in the green room watching the game, and you kind of look over and you go, I'm sitting next to Vida Blue watching a baseball game, and he's telling me to, and you don't like verbalize it, but the little kid in you comes out. And I'm like, I remember watching that guy pitch when I was a little kid, and now I'm watching games with him, and he's calling me by my name. So that was one of the great joys of my career, and he was a wonderful human being.
Well, it's so funny because when Russell and I have done this golf tournament, I've had to I'm going to tease Russell a little bit now. I said, Russell, okay, don't get starstruck. Because it's like we had Rick Barry and some, and Vida and all this, and a lot of famous people, and so of course Russell still had to say, Rick, you were my favorite player. But I tell you, it was so fun.
You know what? Rick likes hearing that. Look, Rick, I would have loved hearing that. So you did a good thing, Russell.
Okay,
I know.
He's still a little salty, But I tell you, the
one thing that Rick Barry likes more than being on the radio or being interviewed is golf. And so the one thing you can't come between Rick and his golf. As we were in between holes, he was like, "It's nice to be on the air, but I got to hit this ball." So he was in and out pretty quickly.
Yeah, also fishing and hunting. But I tell you, my favorite one was when I had Joe Morgan. This was before Russell joined the show. I had Joe Morgan and Vita Blue, like on at the table. We were doing this show from the golf tournament, right? And of course, we're talking about the 72 World Series, and I tell you, the banter back and forth, and Vita's just nice and easy going, because they won the World Series. You could tell Joe had still just a little bit of frustration, and it's like, well, no, wait a minute, you go a couple more games, we would beat you guys,
Yeah, exactly. There's always the competitiveness those guys have. They maintain it all throughout their careers and beyond their careers. Even when they talk to one another in another circumstance, they remember. They can probably go over their at-bats together and say, it was 2-1, he threw me a slider low and away. And I'm telling you, these guys have memories that are steel traps.
Yeah.
Speaking of the A's, what did you guys think about the fifth inning when you could hear all the fans shouting, "Sell the team, sell the team" on Sunday's game?
Yeah, my opinion on that is, and I will tell you, it might only be able to happen in the Bay Area to get Giants and A's fans to do it together, to get a multitude of A's fans to do it, no matter what. They have the reverse boycott. That's really a Bay Area centric thing. And I think it's beautiful that they've all come together and they've made their statement and they're making their voices heard. I do think it's unique. It is a different way to see a game. I know there are a lot of frustrated fan bases out there. The Athletics fan base is probably in the number one slot as far as frustration goes. They've done a good job to organize. It's sad that they're moving. But I continue to admire the fact that they're not giving up, so good for them.
Yeah, the A's, it's so strange. They just could never draw the crowds. I mean, maybe back in the early 70s and all that, but,
Well, wait a minute. If you go back to the late 80s, guys, you go back to the late 80s with the Dave Stewart teams.
Oh, yeah, Canseco. Ricky Henderson.
Canseco. I mean, they're getting 40,000. They were drawing 3 million
True.
a year, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was 2 million. I might be a million off. Now that's a lot to be off on, but they were doing 2 million easy, and there was a love for that team. I remember living in the Bay Area at the time, and I would take Bart to the ball game. I remember distinctly. It was a Monday night, and I took Bart down to the ballpark from I was living in the city. Went in because I was going to watch Dave Stewart against Roger Clemens on the hill, and the Red Sox were in town. It was a fantastic night. The ballpark was packed. I'm in the third deck way up top. So they used to get those crowds, but really in the last 15 years, even when they were playoff teams, it was sparse at best, and the best crowds were when they played the Giants, and most of the ballpark was filled with orange.
Giants, yeah. And that's the thing is you'd think that with a playoff team, there'd be more excitement, but it just, they are chasing.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
Because the fans knew that if they were going to root for these guys, that maybe a year later they'd all be playing for the Yankees or Boston or the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
Why get excited about a team that is going to be immediately dismantled as soon as their contracts come due?
Well, I felt, if you could, and you can carry it over the Giants on this, when the Giants hired Farhan Zaidi, you remember what he came from the A's system of that, making sure you make wise deals. You don't overspend on anybody. When they get to be too good, you move them. Sure, he went to the Dodgers and did some different things with a different pocketbook, but I was always wondering if he was going to have nondescript guys who were really good, and he found them because he's a really smart guy who has a great algorithm, who can find great guys, that if he was going to have a bunch of nondescript guys who ended up being competitive and a winning team, but we wouldn't see him for more than 3 or 4 years before they were moved on. Now, I don't know if that's played out, but do they have the superstar name? Do the Giants have the superstar name that's Buster Posey-like any longer?
No, because some of those guys like Brandon Crawford, some of these guys are getting to the end of their careers.
Right. I mean, that's good that they're keeping him. But remember, Brandon Crawford's a Bay Area guy, so he might give them a hometown discount in order to stay around. But I'll be intrigued if the Giants get into the Shohei Ohtani Derby, because they certainly have the money to do it. And it would be nice to see them go out and add a monster piece. So, I mean, if you're willing to spend 50 to 60 million a year on a guy, That'd be
We
the guy
were
to
with
pony up
Judge.
for.
We were with Judge and we were with Correa,
Yeah.
but we always seem to be used as a middleman to get more money for players. Players tend to use us as the sounding board to say, if you don't, pay me enough money, I'll go to the Giants. And by the time negotiations are over, they wind up with their original team and not coming over to San Francisco. And, we haven't really landed a massive free agent probably since Melanson.
Yeah, that. And I remember when Bobby Evans was the general manager and the Giants kept coming in second in free agent derbies. They'd be in the hunt. They're pitching on guys. They come in second. They came in second. Who was the pitcher that they thought they had the press release written and he ended up signing with Arizona. So then the Giants went out and got Cueto and Samardzija. Who's
Greinke.
the pitcher that
Greinke.
Was that
Greinke?
Yes.
And
yes.
then he ended up with Arizona. Maybe it was Greinke.
Hey
but
guys,
he was the guy they were going to.
We have to cut to our break here. All right. Talking
Okay,
about
go
NFL
ahead.
running backs. Okay, I've got the first question is going to be fairly easy. The next two are going to be a little harder. The 1972 Miami Dolphins went a perfect 14-0. They not only had two running backs in Larry, I don't know why it was really Larry Zonka. I think it was a fullback, but anyway, Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris, each 1,000-yard rushing. But another running back who rushed for 500 plus yards. Who was the third running back? All right. That one's the easy one. All right. Of
That's
course,
supposed to be easy.
That's easy. Yeah. Especially for us older guys.
Our age.
All right. So that's right. So
That's an older guy.
stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown along with Jim Kozimor and Russell Jackman. 1972 Miami Dolphins. Perfect season, 14-0. They not only had two running backs in Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris, each with 1,000 yards, but another running back who rushed for 500 yards. Who was the third running back?
Russell, you want to kick that one in?
I could only think of Mercury Morris. And
No, he's giving you a hint.
I'm going to give you a real good hint. You want to give that one you want to take a kick at that one?
Hey, Russell, you got to kick this around a bit, okay?
I'm still at a loss.
All right, Jim, go ahead and tell them who it was.
Good old number 21, Jim Kick.
Jim
with
Kick.
Two eyes.
With
two eyes.
That's
Jim
it.
Kick rushed for over 500. And do you know who the quarterback was on that team?
Bob Greasy.
And do you know who the number one receiver was on that team?
Warfield.
Yes, Paul Warfield, good old number 42.
Yeah,
Why is it that we remember the starting skill position guys on the 1972
I know.
Dolphins?
And what did they and who was the I think it was the middle linebacker for
Nick
the
Bonacani.
Nick Bonacani. And what did they call
number 53, if I'm not mistaken. 53?
Yeah, 53 or 55. I can't remember, probably 53.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, and who was on the front line, on defense, who was considered like one of the strongest men in the NFL?
Oh, that one you got me on that.
Number
I thought you were gonna give me
number 75, Manny Fernandez. And do you remember?
Oh, that's a good one.
And what they used to call their defense? The no-name defense. Nobody ever knew who they were. That was a no-name defense.
Clearly, I was giving you that just in my response, my facial response on that one. And everyone remembers the kicker, right, on that team? Was it Garo Yepremian,
who tried to.
Did he roll cigars or did he make ties? What did he do? Was he a cigar roller or he made ties? He had another skill outside of kicking. It was either tie making or cigar making. I forget.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember. I just still remember against Washington in the Super Bowl. He tried to he kicked it and he tried to throw it right-handed because he was left-handed and just very silly. In fact, I think that was the only score that Washington had was because.
Yes, it was interception, pick six.
All right, so I'm going to ask you guys. This is kind of it's only due to sports because it happened there. So climate protesters disrupt Andy Murray's tennis match. Now, I got a question for you guys. How do you feel about people showing up at your work and disrupting it for their own agenda?
I'll start with that. I think it stinks. I understand that the climate group has a concern. You go for it. but I think you're doing your service you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're not going to get a lot of these people they're not going to listen to your message. They're just going to say, listen, we came here to get away from all of the distraction of real life to watch a couple of professional athletes ply their trade, and you're disrupting that. I think that as much as I understand their concerns, I don't think that's the proper venue to do it.
I mean, they could, like, if they wanted to, let's say because I understand they want to like get a big crowd. You know, if you want to protest outside the stadium, assuming that it's legal to do that country, okay, then that's one thing. But don't disrupt, because the thing is, it's not only the fans who are paying, but the sports players. I mean, that's their profession. In fact, it reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where Kramer's date just laughs like crazy and throws him off. And then he says, well, how would you like if I showed up at your work and, hassled you? Right. And then he doesn't. Yeah. So Russell, what are your feelings on all that?
Yeah, well, we've been seeing since 2020 a lot of terrible behavior by people in public since they've come back out of isolation. And they seem to have like completely forgotten how to act at all. I mean, I was just reading the other on SFGate today about how many people are acting like total idiots at the Barbie movie, that are coming into the Barbie movie and either being totally drunk and getting in fights with people, or they won't.
I didn't hear any of that. Seriously?
That's ridiculous.
I mean,
yeah, no, there was a guy, actually, I hate to sidetrack it so much, but he was nude inside sitting in the first row of the Barbie movie.
Okay, I'm trying to understand, like, what specifically about the Barbie movie does that have to do with any of these sort of oddities? I mean, I understand it's kind of a silly movie, because of Barbie and all that. Someone actually told me it was a little bit of a tearjerker. I haven't seen it yet. But they said they actually enjoyed it.
I just saw it on Sunday.
Oh, you did? Yeah. What did you think?
I think it's less of a comedy and it's more of a philosophical statement about women's roles. I actually was surprised that it's more of a serious movie. If you look at it the way that if you look at it on the surface, it's just a simple comedy. But if you look deeper, you can see where they have some significant messages. And I absolutely love the set design. The set design was amazing. The world they created for the Barbie world itself is one of the most amazing visual things that you'll see on, in movies.
Listen, anything with Margot Robbie in it, I want to see.
Well, they even point out, Margot Robbie at one point in time, it says, she's like, oh, I feel so unattractive. And Helen Mirren, who's the narrator, says, editor's note, if you're going to do the scene, don't have Margot Robbie in it.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. I will tell you this, though, on the social commentary part, I have 3 daughters who are teenagers, 2 17-year-olds and a 19-year-old. And all 3 of them, when they saw the film at the end, took pictures of themselves, and they went separately, and they all were crying.
That's right. Again, that's what I heard. I heard it's a little bit of a tearjerker. So don't ruin it for me, because I definitely
no spoilers. No spoilers. That's it. That's all I'll tell you, though. For the young ladies, I think it's a very moving film.
Okay, very good. All right,
and for dads, because there's some things in there that dads, I think, also could pick up on.
You could pick up on.
I agree too. I think you've got a daughter, so you'll relate, Edward, when you see it. I think you will.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. Listen, I'll tell you, when my daughter was 3 years old, she found a little material, like a veil type thing, and she had this white nightgown on it because that's what she used to wear. And she put this little veil thing on, and she goes, "Look, Daddy, I'm a bride." And I just said, "Oh, that's so." And I literally started crying because I realized, oh my God, she really is going to be a bride someday like that. Okay, so staying on the topic of the soft Barbie thing, we're going to move on to MMA fighting.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, so Stephen Thompson, apparently he has still not been paid. And apparently the situation was that his opponent did not make weight. He was 3 pounds over. And Thompson just opted not to fight. Kind of reminds me of that movie with Wahlberg and Christian Bale. So what do you think of a situation like that? I mean, it's not really fair to Thompson to make him fight somebody who's out of the weight class. But if he chose to fight, then everything's fine. He would, get paid. But apparently he's not getting paid yet on that.
Well, Russell, you're a lawyer, and
Yes.
this comes down to this really is a story of sports law and how the contract is written. Do you
agree.
only get paid if you perform the fight, or do you get paid if you are prepared to fight and your opponent hasn't? Should you be penalized? Or are there clauses that say, hey, if your opponent doesn't fight, you can either fight a secondary fighter or take lesser of a salary? I don't know, Russell, but you
And Jim,
be the best one.
another big factor is he getting any percentage of the gate?
I don't
That's
know.
always a big part of everything.
Yeah.
Is if you don't have a gate, then what percentage can you get? If nobody comes in, you're supposed to get 20% of the gate or something. Then you won't get anything. If it's not.
But wait a minute though. I'm guessing that wasn't the only fight on the ticket, right?
But if that's the one, I don't know. You're supposed to get a certain amount based on, like, if you're the headliner. It's, and people, if they know that you aren't there, they may not show up. So it's almost impossible to calculate. But a lot of contracts have what's called a force majeure, or a good contract that's written should have contingency saying, if your opponent doesn't show up, if your opponent defaults, I'd be stunned considering how much was at stake here. If some attorney didn't really fine-tooth comb it and make some kind of contingency, because in the end, it's not that guy's fault.
No,
you can't
exactly.
say that he shouldn't be compelled to fight somebody that doesn't meet the qualifications of the rules of the sport. So that he shouldn't have been forced to fight that fight. And there has to be some contingency in there. Like, if the guy is in a car accident on the way over, to the arena and can't fight, or is in another fighter. We've seen athletes go and wash their cars or drive motor scooters or stuff like that and get hurt. And usually at that point you'd say, okay, or if there may be some substitution thing that's involved as well, that he would have had to fight an alternative fighter. I don't know any of that stuff, so I can't really comment on that, but that's often a typical thing, is that if the guy doesn't make weight, then the number 2 contender,
that's a good point. Okay, hey guys, we're gonna get to our second commercial break trivia question here. Talking NFL running backs. All right, now Russell hates it when I ask these hard older questions. Okay.
Oh my God.
In the year 1625 in football. No, that's kidding. Okay. From 1972 to 1976, O.J. Simpson won 4 rushing titles. Which running back prevented Simpson from winning 5 consecutive at that time? And this was his only rushing title, this one guy. All right. That's our trivia question. Hold on, stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101 one more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Russell Jackman and our special guest, Jim Kozimor. Second trivia question from 1972 to 1976. O.J. Simpson won 4 rushing titles. Which running back prevented Simpson from winning 5 consecutive at that time? And this was by winning his only rushing title.
Gale Sayers?
No, he had retired by then.
Oh,
I think he retired by then. Sorry.
This
is a tough one.
Yeah,
I'll give you a hint, but I don't think this is going to help.
And I don't think Walter Payton was in the league yet. He had won a number of
too early.
No. Okay, 1974 was the year, and it was he played for the Broncos. It's tough.
Floyd.
Well, Floyd Little. No, that's no. I think he had played just.
That's a different era.
Different area. No, Otis Armstrong. That's tough.
Really?
Yeah. That's a tough.
In fact, I'm the only Otis I can think of is Otis Anderson from the Giants.
I agree.
The Giants, but no, Otis Armstrong. Yeah. Don't worry, Russell. The next question is going to be even harder. Okay. All right. Now, Jim, you're not even 60 years old, and you're retired.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So if I had your money, I'd throw mine away. All right.
No, that's not it. I live very cheaply. That's how I do it.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, because there's so much money in radio, right?
Yeah.
So
I know. All right.
just keep us up to date. What's going on in the life of Jim Kozimor?
So, you know what? I was blessed. I had a really wonderful run. My career spanned over 30 years. I did radio and television for the bulk of that. The back half of my career was more television related. I ended up working for NBC Sports, in which I did 6 Olympic Games, a Paralympic game. I won 3 Emmys through NBC Sports when I was in San Francisco. I'll tell you, I was so lucky, so blessed. I was the regional host for a Super Bowl, a World Series, an NBA Finals, a Stanley Cup Finals, and a U.S. Open Golf. Remember, that was at the Olympic Club. I think it was 2010 or so, right in that general range. So I really had a chance to sit and do a lot of things. And so now that I'm retired, I'm not yet 60, so I'm still active and doing things. I play a ton of pickleball, and I just have fun. I do you know what? When you work in our profession, you miss a lot of things. You work a lot of holidays. I was out of town for a number of Christmas days. I missed birthdays. I missed all 3 of my daughter's first steps because I was traveling or somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's those things that you miss. Well, now that I'm still active enough and my daughters are still young enough, I want to be present and I want to be there for their senior year. Yeah. And I'm there for their senior year of high school. I'm there to take my daughter to college for her sophomore year now. And so that's really what I'm focused on, being a better husband and a better dad, and not miss the things that I did in the past, because that might have caused some issues in our family. But now hopefully things are going better. So that's what I'm doing now. And I'm loving, I miss everything about the Bay Area. I miss all my friends. I miss covering the great fans, being there with the fans, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love being here with my family.
And did you move there because of extended family?
No, my wife and I were going to retire in the state of Tennessee. I was going to retire once I hit 60 or 61, right around there. And we had decided we were going to retire in the state of Tennessee, but we needed to kind of hit reset for our family. We decided to do it 2 years sooner. We were blessed to have the means to do it at the time. And we decided to pick up and move. And then afterwards, my daughter chose to go to the University of Tennessee. And she didn't want to go to the University of Tennessee, but she ended up loving it. So it was perfect. It worked out perfect for our family.
That's great.
What city in Tennessee are you near? What city are you near? Nashville's the major city, and then I'm in a suburb called Franklin. So think of, if you're a Bay Area person, think of maybe Danville to San Francisco, that type of. I've driven through it.
Yeah. Perfect.
I've driven through it on my way across the country in a stuffy little Honda in 1991. But that could be a podcast in itself. Everything that I did on that particular.
Sure. Well, I don't know how you can retire, because I love work. I can sit and watch it for hours. You know.
Yeah.
But
you know what? I do miss work. I do greatly miss work. There are days when I say I wish I was doing X, Y, or Z, whatever that was. But when I weigh it in the totality of life, you know what? I'd rather be here for my daughters.
That's much more important.
Pollyannic. Yeah, I know what you mean. But I loved my work. I loved going to work. I loved the preparation for the work. There's nothing I didn't like about it. So that decision to pull the plug was not easy. And I'll tell you, for anyone's considering retirement, have a plan, because when I came here a year ago, there were a couple of dark days when I didn't know how to fill my day, and you can feel lonely as a human.
Yeah, you gotta have a purpose in life. Yeah, it's like when
you need a purpose.
I mean, when I got out of college, because I got my bachelor's in accounting and master's in tax, so I started my own tax practice. And during tax season and all that, and my dad died early of a heart attack as a CPA, and so I said, you know what, I don't want to have that kind of stress. And so when my son was young, I said, you know what, I mentally said, I know if I stay at the office more, I could probably make an extra $100,000 a year. But it's like, you know what, it's not worth it. I want to be there for my family, and it's so much better Because Russell, you're home with your family a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, as a computer consultant as well as being an attorney, I do a lot of work remotely anyway. And then 2020 really pushed that up. The
Yeah.
people are doing more and more work remotely, so you don't have to do the 9 to 5 thing and go into the office. But soon my kids will, I have twins that are age 12. They're gonna not want to hang around here all the time, and then
True. No, but
it
you
was
know
more
what?
important that I was there. It's more important I was there when they were younger.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't. I always tell this story. It was kind of funny. When my son was 17 and he had his friends over, and one time he said, "Okay, Dad, my friends and I were going to go, to the ice cream truck, whatever it was, right?" And he comes up to me and gives me a nice big hug and kiss. He goes, "I love you, Dad." I kind of teased him. I go, "Christian," I go, don't embarrass me like that in front of your friends, He got a kick out of it. Some of his friends, but we have a really good relationship. In fact, it's interesting because he lives in North Carolina, and he is actually the one who reaches out to say, "Hey, can we have a Zoom call this Sunday night?" Rather than always the parents going to the kids to do it. So it's
Wow.
You did it right, Edward.
And I have a question for Jim, and that is, would you consider going to a Sacramento Kings playoff game this year? I mean, so many years you covered the Kings, and they were just garbage on ice, and
garbage on ice.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, I will tell you, because the history of me with the Kings. It's twofold. My first stint with the Kings, I arrived in the 98-99 season. That was the lockout shortened 50-game season. And the Kings made the playoffs for the second time in their existence. And then they had that brilliant run with Vlade Divac and Peja Stojakovic and Chris Webber and Mike Bibby. And all I did was see winning basketball. And then I left and I went to NBC, and I was there doing shows for 7 years. And then the Kings asked NBC to put me back on that beat. And I didn't really want to go back, but I eventually relented because the Kings really, I don't think it's fair to say they were begging me, but they were certainly asking me aggressively to come back to do their games.
That's nice.
And and so I went back, and that's Russell when they stunk on ice, man. They were hard to watch. They were a group of misfits. The front office, the ownership was an embarrassment. Front office was an embarrassment. They didn't know what they were doing.
I'll throw the name John Salmons out at you, and a lot of DeMarcus Cousins. When he couldn't, he was a great player, but he couldn't put together a good team around him. And I lived in Sacramento from 90 to 98, so I got to see all of those teams just like you, and that's when I called you in at your show at KHTK. Was in that 98 season, and then I've been a Warriors fan my whole life, but I want Sacramento to be better because I think could agree with me. That's a good town with a lot of good fans. Deep
capital.
Yeah, that's what I was most sad about for those years. The second time I came back, I'm trying to think when that was. It was right around the pandemic, just before the pandemic, through the pandemic, and then I retired. They were so bad, and the fans there are so hopeful. They're so behind the team. They really love that organization, and they would lose 7 in a row, and they would win a game, and they would go, it's clicked. They found it. They're going to start their winning. They are so hopeful. And I just love them for that. And so I would never say a bad thing about the fans. They're the most wonderful thing. And that's really, Russell, what I root for. If the team is good, I want them to be good for the fan base because they have they've been great to me and my family. So I could never root against the fans. But that organization, boy, they had some bad eggs in that operation for a long. Some of those bad eggs are still there, but it's bad. I do think the basketball operations is better now. And I think that they will be a second round playoff team next year in the West.
I met one of the owners not recently, I'd say maybe a year or so ago at a business thing. We were in Vegas, and it was a real estate thing. And I see this guy with a Sacramento Kings jacket on, and I know he's not a player. And he was like the owner's son or something. But it's funny. One time we were going to, gosh, this is going back to the 90s. we were asked to make a loan to somebody, and they wanted to put up their share of the ownership of the Sacramento Kings. And
Really?
yeah, they owned like 2% or something like that. And we said, well, if you can get everyone else on board, and of course they couldn't, because people are going, why am I going to be willing to put up my share for you to get a loan with these guys? That doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
Okay, let's see.
Wow, that's something. But boy, if you'd get 2% of the team, then it's worth billions now. So
well, it was just collateral, right? I mean, they weren't selling it; they were just doing it. Hey, before we get to our break, Vince McMahon, his house gets raided, and everyone's thinking it's because he happens to be friends with Trump, because it seems like anybody who's associated with Trump gets their house raided. I mean, even if you're the cleaning lady. Probably.
I once bet at the Trump Casino in Atlantic City back in the 90s. I placed a bet, and I think my house got raided recently. So I got to look out.
Okay, all right. You guys ready for our last commercial break here? All right, here we go.
Yes.
And I'll be very impressed, Russell, if you can get this one. Which running back set a record for fumbling the ball 15 times in the same season? I was going to say the same game, but that's impossible. Same season. And it's funny because when I was looking at this trivia question, one of the answers, they give you like multiple choice. One of them was Wendell Tyler. And I thought for sure it was him because
I remember Wendell Tyler.
Remember him? He would fumble all the time, but it was not him.
Was it, were you thinking of 49er Wendell Tyler or Ram Wendell Tyler?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both, but mostly for the 49ers. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, he just had fumble. And then David Craig was the big fumbler for the Seahawks. I think he had little tiny hands. Yeah.
And also Ronaldo Nehemiah used to drop the ball a ton for the 49ers. You guys remember him?
Actually, it's funny. Jerry Rice did that in the beginning too. Okay, so really quickly again, which running back set a record for fumbling the ball 15 times in the same season? All right, stay with us. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back with some closing comments. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Jim Kozimor and Russell Jackman. Third trivia question: which running back set a record for fumbling the ball 15 times in the same season? I'll give you a hint, but I'm not sure how much this is going to help. Played for the Cardinals. And I think it was the St. Louis Cardinals back then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Was it there? Well, Otis Anderson played for the St. Louis Cardinals too, didn't he?
He did, but that's not the answer.
That's not the answer. I'm trying. Terry Metcalf.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very good. I got you. You know what? Whether I give you a hint or not, I'm impressed. All right, Jim Kozimor, thank you so much for joining us on Sports Econ 101. And be ready for our thoughts for the day. These are the kind of things that Russell lives for. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so you ready? So I hired a contractor and gave him a to-do list, and he only completed items 1, 3, and 5. Turns out he only does odd jobs.
Oh yeah.
All right. Jim's saying, he goes, I'm never going to be coming on this show again. Okay, and I can't understand why my calculator stopped working. It just doesn't add up. All right,
you can't count on it. You can't count
on it. Oh, Russell, you know what? Every time I come up with these, Russell comes up with an additional one. That's good, Russell. You do. You're good. I'm going to make you come up with these on your own.
You could divide those two answers anytime and tell the joke to different audiences. Then.
There you go. Joke helper.
Very good. Don't encourage me. All right.
You can divide that and tell that joke many times.
Yes.
Oh.
All right. I'm incorrigible, so don't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We'll be discussing sports topics from a business perspective, asking more sports trivia questions, and of course, coming up with more dad jokes. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
So long.